morning, everybody. It is man coverage. It is September 25, 2022. It is college football week 4. This is Knoxville Nate and James Bonneville. James, how are you doing this morning, sir?
And it better be a crime. It is a fantastic Sunday. What a great week of football we had this week. I mean, it was just fantastic. There was just so many games across the board that you could really lean into. From in the SEC, you're talking Georgia, Kent State, down the line, that Arkansas, Texas A&M game, on and on. But let's kick it off with talking about Georgia and Kent State right off the bat. Nate,
Yeah.
what were your initial thoughts in that game? I was kind of perplexed on this one, but give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I didn't see it coming, but I am not like the Barrett Sallees of the world and the rest of the SEC lovers and apologists who are giving Georgia a pass on this game. I think you have to take each game that occurs and add it to a team's resume. And I get it. Georgia's played great throughout the season. They've blown out the South Carolina game, for instance. I thought was unbelievable. Obviously, the Oregon blowout told some tales, but you have to take this game into account as well. And this was not a good performance. This game was way closer than the score. I know it finished 39-22, but this was a 2-point game. In the end of towards the end of the second quarter, it was still very close throughout the third quarter, and there was definitely some mistakes made by Georgia. There was looked like some lackluster play. It just didn't really look like their team was into it. And Kent State, as me and you discussed, has played a very hard schedule this far. They've played Washington, they've played Oklahoma. They weren't scared to go into Athens and play the Dogs, and the Dogs were paying them $1.9 million to come to town. And I always love it when a team pays another team millions of dollars to come and almost beat them. I've heard all over this morning and last night that this will not affect Georgia. And I realize I am a Buckeye fan first and foremost, but I don't understand how you can be Ohio State and beat Notre Dame and go back 3 spots, but you can, beat Georgia and lay an egg against Kent State and not be affected in the polls. Do you think this should change our perception at all about Georgia in the slightest, James?
Honestly, I think the proof will be in the pudding, knowing what we see in the next few weeks. I mean, you're right. Georgia looked really good in their first 3 games, so they gave up a total of 10 points. But you look at Kent State. I mean, offensively, they're up tempo. Shalee likes to throw the ball around. Coach Lewis up there has done a great job of making them a very high energy team. But I mean, their big downfalls this year have been in their offensive line play as well as their defense. They can't really stop anything. And, Georgia, this is a game where Kent State really shouldn't have put up more than 15 with that Georgia defense playing the way it does. And they should have dropped a 50 burger at a minimum. And it was kind of interesting how this was even somewhat of a game. I mean, you still saw great numbers out of Bowers, who, let's be honest, is the best tight end in the country. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He is better than Michael Mayer in Notre Dame. But, I mean, they just didn't – the score didn't jump off the page to me. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of perplexed. And I think you look at Georgia's schedule in the next few games. I mean, they got Mizzou next week. They got Vanderbilt after that. And Auburn after that, and then Vanderbilt. It's not like we're talking a juggernaut next 3 games. So I'm not even sure if we'll be really to know anything until cocktail party. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I got to be honest. I mean, we'll talk about this game here in a minute, but I'm not impressed with the Gators either. They were lackluster as well yesterday at best. Their defense looked horrible. So, yeah, I mean, they should roll. Missouri, that's a win. Auburn, that's a definite win. Vanderbilt, that's a win. And I think Florida's a win too. The only games that I see, Georgia's got a very favorable schedule this year. Once they took care of business, which they did, week 1 versus Oregon, Besides that, their schedule's pretty good looking, especially considering they have Tennessee at home and, go to Kentucky the second to last game of the year. I mean, that Kentucky, you know, we'll talk about their game here in a minute, but they don't necessarily scare me.
No.
So who's going to beat Georgia? I mean, I don't think anybody is, but I'm still not sure exactly how good this Georgia team is. I don't think they're as good as they were last year at all. I think good,
yeah. I mean, when you lose seven guys off that defense that go 6 in the first round, I mean, you just can't replace that. Now, Jalen Carter is a legit defensive tackle. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he is outstanding, and their corners are very, very good. But I just, it's so hard to really understand who they are because the schedule, I mean, honestly, I don't think it helps them going into the SEC championship and the playoff potentially because, I mean, it doesn't give them that real next level step to really prepare for the big boys across the country, like the Ohio States of the world.
Yeah. No, I'm not sure, who the number one team is. Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
If it's Ohio State, I'm not sure if it's Bama. I'm not sure if it's Georgia. I honestly am not 100% sure who to pick to be number one right now. I know that they're gonna choose Georgia probably or Bama, but we'll get into all the games here in a minute. But I think yesterday needs to go into the resume for Georgia and not just get thrown out because it's Georgia.
So if we're using AJ McCarron's logic, does that mean Kent State's a really good program? Yeah. Kind of like
yeah, we have to tell people about that. So I made the mistake one night of watching the wrap up show, and that's what it's called, the wrap up show on ESPN, one of the worst sports network around, who had the new wrap-up show with AJ McCarron and some other guy who I'd never seen before. And after the near loss to Texas, AJ McCarron goes on and on for 5+ minutes how good Texas is and how they're a top 5 team guaranteed. This was the same show where he talked about how Ohio State sucked because they almost lost to Notre Dame, which really they didn't. But they, he gave them no credit for beating the Irish by 11, but then, gives Alabama a bunch of credit for beating Texas by 1 point when, we all know that there was several plays that occurred in that game and calls that could have had it go the other way. So, yeah, I don't know if Kent State's now going to be a top 5 team too, but we'll have to ask AJ. Since he's definitely got time because he's not playing today because he's one of the worst NFL quarterbacks of all time. But
no, I mean, how hard can your job be? You get the ball, you hand it off to a running back in Alabama's offense, and don't throw a pick. I mean, it's not like it's that tough. I mean, when he introduces himself on ESPN, he should introduce himself as Catherine Webb's husband, not AJ McCarron. And I mean, part of I always got disturbed when I heard Brett Musburger talk about Catherine Webb because it was just kind of creepy. Every time AJ McCarron was playing and they'd pan over to him and he just sounded like a creepy old man. I mean, it was just bad. So
yeah, well, there's that show was just bad. And I get it. He's a Bama homer. I understand that. I'm a Buckeye homer, but I also try and, pick out the truth somewhere from my fandom, and calling Texas a top 5 team was just absolutely ridiculous. And we'll get to their game here in a minute, but let's go ahead and move on, shall we? And discuss I'm going to go ahead and throw out my player of the week because we're discussing the game he played in. And I don't know, man, I've got to give some credit to Adrian Martinez. Adrian took a lot of the blame for what happened in Nebraska last year. Rightly so or not rightly so. He was the quarterback. So, you lose 1-score games, the quarterback's going to take a lot of the heat. And then last week versus Tulane, he also got a lot of heat, and he should have. He didn't play very good. Their offense was bad. They lost a game to Tulane, but for whatever reason, Kansas State seems to always play well versus Oklahoma. Oklahoma came in a big favorite. They were ranked number 6 in the country. They were undefeated, and this game was pretty much handled by Kansas State all the way. Oklahoma got a score late to cut it to 7 and then kicked an onside kick, but it really wasn't that close. Adrian Martinez was awesome. The game was there was a 7-point game. Kansas State was scoring. There was a third, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was 3rd and 16.
Yep.
Right?
And he went for 50.
Yeah, 3rd and 16. And Adrian drops back to pass, keeps it himself, and goes for 55 yards, and it gets down to like the 2-yard line, and then takes it in himself. He's my player of the day. 21 of 34, 234 yards and a touchdown, no picks, and then 21 carries for 148 yards and 4 touchdowns. James, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought Brent Venables was a defensive coordinator previously. Is that correct?
That would be the rumor.
Okay.
But
so how the hell does he give up 275 on the ground to K-State? I don't know, man. I just after watching the Tulane game last week, I thought Oklahoma would take care of business, but they did not. What does this mean for the Big 12 moving forward? What does this mean for the Sooners, and what was your thought when you saw this game go final?
Well, I mean, we called this game going into it. I mean, this was a game, especially when they brought Adrian Martinez in. We were calling this game that Kansas State was going to go into Oklahoma, which they always play well in. I mean, they have lost games before where they have completely stubbed their toe the week before they go into OU and then come out against OU and go guns blazing. I mean, Colin Klein, if you don't remember him during his K-State days, you're missing something, because that guy was amazing in Bill Snyder's offense. And it literally looked like a faster version of Colin Klein watching Adrian Martinez. It's what people expected him to be at Nebraska. And I mean, these numbers are fantastic for Adrian today. I mean, literally showed out. And on top of that, Deuce Vaughn, 25 of 116, doesn't score a touchdown because Adrian Martinez got them all, and then 2 catches for 13 yards. I mean, Oklahoma never, ever felt like they had any momentum in this game. They tied it up in the first quarter, and then after that, K-State just kept putting the pressure on and the pressure on and the pressure on. And Oklahoma couldn't get a lead at home.
Yeah, I give credit also to K-State's defense. They played very well. I didn't really like the going into the prevent at the end. I don't understand why. And this was a question I wanted to ask you. Why don't teams keep doing what they're doing when they're having success on defense all day long? Why do they change towards the end of the game and try and go into this prevent crap? I get it, not to let anybody behind you, but just say, don't let anybody behind you, but keep doing what you're doing. Because all prevent ever seems to do for me is prevent the defense from stopping them or winning the game.
Well, so you're trying not to lose rather than trying to win.
Exactly. Yeah. So why not keep doing what you've been doing all day long, which has been working? Why stop doing that just because you have a lead? I don't get it. That's the only reason that Oklahoma was able to go down and score at the end, was because they were dropping way back in cover 3 and playing off the receivers, and they were just letting them get 20 yards and get 15 yards and get 20 yards and get 10 yards, and they were able to move down. I just don't get it. I don't understand why teams do that.
Yeah. It's amazing how Bob Stoops had a problem, Lincoln Riley had a problem, and now Brent Venables has a problem. And 2 of those guys either worked for or played for K-State at one point. I mean, people forget Brent Venables was part of a Bill Snyder team, a linebacker during that time there. It's just they cannot get K-State out of their head, and that Power Cat offense does something to them. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how OU responds back next week. I mean, you've got TCU, who's got a very high-powered offense. I still think OU is going to pull that off, but going into that Eamon Carter is always a tough play. And then next week, K-State's got to go to, let's see here. It's, Texas Tech. That should be an interesting game, but they got them at home up in Manhattan. So that should be interesting.
That should be very interesting. And we'll see where each one of these teams go, because I'm not 100% sure where these teams go, honestly.
The team that nobody's talking about right now, and this happens continually, is Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
I mean, Oklahoma State is just quietly doing their thing. They're 3-0 in conference. Nobody's talking about them, but they're ranked 9th in the country, and Spencer Sanders actually looks pretty good, which is kind of shocking.
Yeah, he looks much improved, and I haven't really given him the credit he deserves, because I think he looks a ton better than he did last year.
Oh, way better.
No one's talking about that team at all. I mean, no one's giving them any credit, and honestly, I'm picking them to win the Big 12 right now.
Yeah, I would. I mean, honestly, they look like they're playing the best ball. They still have work to do on defense, but honestly, offensively, Spencer Sanders hasn't looked better.
Yeah, no, I agree. So we'll see what happens with the Big 12 moving forward. But, this could very well end it for the Oklahoma Sooners, because this was a big loss for them. And I think they could be in some trouble because I think they were exposed a little bit on defense, which is what their coach is supposed to be known for.
Yeah.
Not good. Showing from this looked like the Oklahoma defense from like 3 years ago when they couldn't stop anybody. Remember they were scoring at a ridiculous clip, but couldn't stop anybody to save themselves. So we'll see what happens there. But I do want to talk about the game that went into double overtime, and that is the Dabo squad led by DJU, who honestly played a great game yesterday. He looked sharp. He looked much better. And I was also very impressed. I don't feel like this guy gets talked about enough, and that's Will Shipley, the running back from Clemson. I don't think anyone ever talks about him, and he was huge yesterday for Clemson. I felt like he really helped them get it done. I thought it was a good fight by Wake. They had a very good chance to win this game. And, Clemson went for 2, didn't get it. Wake got the ball. All they had to do was score and kick an extra point, and they couldn't get it done. But 51-45, Wake Forest goes down to Clemson. It was at Wake, 2 overtimes. What'd you think about this game, James, and what does this do for the ACC moving forward?
Well, it makes me more confused, because now I believe Clemson can actually win the ACC because there's nobody that's really stepping up. But there are 2 teams out there that I think people need to talk about more, and that's North Carolina State, who really knows how to play a rock fight game. They're great in the trenches. In Florida State, they had a very convincing game last night against BC. I just question their depth, but they're playing much better football this year than they did last year, and I think you can mark them down for 8 wins at a minimum. I think that's the floor for Florida State. Sam Hartman is Sam Hartman. I mean, we talked about him going into the year on our fantasy quarterback podcast. I mean, he is a phenomenal talent. What I don't understand is how he's not getting more love from NFL scouts, because he can make all the throws. Now, does he have a big-time arm, a cannon of an arm? No, he doesn't. But his cerebralness, he knows how to manage a game incredibly well. And I mean, he should be a late round, first round pick, early second round at worst, even though he's only 6'1", 210. But there's a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL that aren't that big.
Yeah, Kyler Murray's not the biggest guy in the world, so
no.
I don't understand why that's
Drew Brees.
The one not going. Yeah, well, 20 of 29, 337 yards, 6 touchdowns. No picks. That's what I think of. I mean, there was 11 touchdown passes thrown in this game. I was kind of like, where are the DBs on this game? But then I remembered you're not allowed to touch anyone anymore. You're not allowed to really cover anybody. You're not allowed to hit anybody. If you do, you get thrown out for targeting. So I guess it makes sense. But
yeah, but you look at
a lot of points scored.
Clemson's defensive line is legit. I mean, it's the best in the
Yeah.
country, and maybe by far. I mean, you've got 3 guys in the defensive line that could be first-round draft picks, 2 of which could be top 10. And I mean, when you throw up that many points, you're just not getting pressure. And I mean, Wake Forest. I mean, it's one thing if Sam Hartman was doing this at a blue blood program. It's a whole nother thing that he's doing this at Wake Forest. That's why I think NFL scouts have really got to take another look at this kid, because I think he's a hidden gem.
He gets the ball out of his hand very quickly. I mean, I think that's the one thing that I definitely took away from the game yesterday. I mean, he almost took Breezy and Miles Murphy and those guys out of the game because he got rid of the ball so quick. And they didn't have a chance to really get a bunch of sacks because they didn't let him. He got the ball out of his hand so quickly. There wasn't really an opportunity to get any sacks. I mean, I don't know. I don't know where Wake goes from here. Hopefully they don't get too down about this loss because they were right there and had a good chance to win. I actually feel pretty good about Wake Forest moving forward just because of the way they played yesterday. Now, looking at their schedule going ahead, they've got Florida State next. I think that's a big, huge game for both teams. I think if Wake Forest can get by them, they still have a chance. I think if Florida State wins, that solidifies them as a contender in the conference. But we'll break that down as we move forward. Dabo lucks out another time. So we'll see. And as you mentioned, NC State won again, looks good. That's who Clemson plays next week. I think that is in my opinion, the ACC game of the year thus far.
Yeah.
Seeing who wins that one, don't you think?
Agreed. I mean, it's Wake Forest's biggest downfall is their defense. They just do not have a good defense, and I think that's going to prevent them from actually holding an ACC title this year.
Yes, and DJU looked better. I feel like he is getting better. I feel like he's got more confidence this year. Yeah. I also feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like the Clemson offensive line is improved.
I agree with you on that. And that's something I've been down on them for some time on. And I felt bad for Will Shipley last year and DJU because they just never had the time. I mean, that Georgia game, granted, Georgia's defensive line last year was insane. But, I mean, DJU looked like a piñata back there last year. He was getting knocked on all the time. And he's not a small guy. And he just looks a lot different now. He's more svelte. Shipley is running hard, running more with his eyes rather than instinct. They just look like a better team overall. They just got to get to that next level, which I don't think they're quite there at yet.
Yeah, no, that is something we haven't really talked about. He lost like 25 pounds or more in the offseason, and he does look better. He's moving, he's quicker, he's faster. He moves around better in the pocket.
Yeah.
I think it was a good move for him. He's still a big dude. So, like, losing that weight didn't hurt him in any way, shape, or form. So let's give him some credit. He has improved his performance, and he does look much better out there behind that line because I think the line's better too. But
yeah,
going back to the Big Ten, as we said, we have to account every game. And so if we break down, we mentioned Georgia, you had to take that Kent State game into account. You can't just throw it out like the SEC homers do. Well, if you're a Big Ten fan, you can't just throw out the Michigan-Maryland game either because there was some horrible calls in this game. I mean, the interception call where Maryland's up by 3, they're driving to his brother, Tagovailoa, throws a pass. Not a great throw, but the Michigan guy traps it. It hits the ground, and the refs rule it an interception. And Gus Johnson's like, what are they talking about? They bring in the ref that always usually says whatever the refs say, the guy who's the ex-ref, and they bring him in, and he says, oh, yeah, whatever they called is right. He says, yeah, that's the wrong call. They're going to reverse it. They quickly flip back to the game, and they've already started playing because they didn't even review it. There was calls like that all day long, and yet Maryland still hung in there and kept it very close. Michigan's getting all the credit in the world for finally beating someone with a pulse, but they barely won this game, 34-27. The Michigan offense did not look the same. Blake Corum, although he had 243 yards, the rushing game was not as effective as it has been. Now, he did get a bunch of yards late, and 243 is a buttload of yards, but I thought McCarthy looked rough. I thought the Michigan defense looked vulnerable at best, and this was the first game that Michigan has played against a team that's not ranked below 119. What did you think about the Wolverines game, and what did you think about this game as a whole?
Two things. I think if Tua's brother Talia does not get hurt, I think Maryland pulls it off. And what's unusual about Michigan is they always have two running backs. Going back to the Bo Schembechler days, there's always a two-headed monster playing a tail. And if you take off Blake Corum's numbers yesterday, they had 0 yards rushing.
Yeah.
That's scary. Granted,
what if he goes down?
He goes down. They're going to bring in Edwards next, but honestly,
that's a big drop off.
That's a big drop off. Blake Corum, we had him very highly rated from last year, and he is a very good talent that people just don't talk about that much, but they can't afford to lose Blake Corum because now they're putting more pressure on that defense as a whole. He's very underrated in this scheme. People probably don't know about him, but a 4-star prospect out of Laurel, Maryland, out of St. Francis Academy. This is a very highly rated kid. And I think he doesn't get the pub that he deserves, especially in the Big Ten, who's got stockpiles of running backs. Chase Brown, Mo Ibrahim, Braylon Allen, the Grant kid out of Nebraska. The list goes on, and people forget about Blake Corum, and he's a good running back. He goes down, Michigan's in trouble quick.
Yeah, he is good. And I'm not saying he didn't have a good game yesterday, because he did. He had a good game, but I'm just saying the offense in general did not.
It didn't click.
The same.
When you have 450 yards and you look at the game and you're wondering how in the hell did that happen, it's kind of weird. Like, the stats don't really tell the game.
No, and they had 0 points in the third quarter. It was 17-14 in the third, 17-14 at halftime, and it remained that all the way through the third quarter. I guess each defense finally, made some adjustments at halftime, but then in the fourth quarter, it's like the game reset and they kicked right back off because they scored 17 and 14 again. So it was kind of crazy how that happened. But I do want to give some credit to Mr. Tugavalea, because he looked pretty good out there at times. I know he had 2 interceptions, but he was playing well until he got a little banged up, and then the wheels fell off a little bit. And that one interception wasn't an interception, so we can take that one off the board. The second one wasn't great. But, Maryland played well in this game, and I thought looked good. And I don't know how good. I don't know if that means that Maryland's better than I thought they were, or if, that means that Michigan's not that great. Because
I think you got to look at what Michigan really is next week in a game they traditionally do not play with in Iowa City against Iowa. Now they're going to go up against a real defense, which they have not even come close to going up against. Now, Iowa's offense is like third world bad, but, as long as you don't have bad turnovers against Iowa, you could beat them. But that's a tough place to play in Iowa City, as you well know. You've been the games there. I've been the games there. It's a tough place. So
yeah. Those people are crazy.
Yeah,
I will give them credit. Winning at Kinnick Stadium is tougher than people might think. It's just a crazy environment.
The stands are on top of the field. There's only 8 yards that separate the sideline where people play to where the fans are.
Yeah.
They are on top of you. And for an opposing team, it's very difficult to play.
Yeah, I agree. I've been there, and it's nuts. So we'll see what happens next week. But the first game against a team with a pulse, like I said, did not look good for them. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But 34-27, people need to realize how close this game was
Oh
because
yeah.
it was, everybody's just saying, oh, another victory for Michigan. Well, this was, a game that was in doubt until the very very end, and could have gone either way, honestly, throughout this contest. If a couple of calls went the other way, this game could have gone the other way. So we'll see what happens there. But we need to run it back to the SEC because there was a pretty big game, a neutral site game. By the way, I didn't realize that
Yeah.
until I
Always that
was
Jerry
watching.
World.
Yeah, I didn't realize that until I was started watching it. But Arkansas, it goes up 14-0. They've got the ball inside the 10-yard line. KJ Jefferson, who played pretty well yesterday, is running towards the end zone, gets the ball knocked out of his hand. Texas A&M picks it up, running it back, gets out to like the 40, their own 40, and the guy's stopped. Well, he stopped for about a second or two, and then he pitches it to one of his teammates who takes it to the house. And that ended up being the difference in the game. Arkansas also missed a fairly short field goal at the very end of the game to end up losing 23-21. I felt bad for Sam Pittman because this is a game, honestly, Arkansas should have won. What did you think about this?
I agree. 100% agree with you. I look at this game, and it was Arkansas got up quick and then just took their foot off the gas and kind of was expecting A&M to just lay over and die. Now, A&M's got talent, but A&M is just still doesn't look good. I mean, you look at Max Johnson's numbers. I mean, granted, it doesn't matter who you put in that freaking offense right now, quarterback. It just doesn't look good. 11 of 21 for 151 and one touchdown. I mean, if it wasn't for Devon Shane, I mean, they would have lost. I mean, they definitely would have lost this game, and probably convincingly. But it was like the tale of two games. First quarter, Arkansas looked unbeatable, and after that, A&M just played A&M football, and Arkansas just looked lost.
Yeah, I agree. And this defense for A&M, I mean, how many times have they scored going back the last 2-3 seasons?
Yeah.
It seems like every game I watch, every big game, they get a touchdown for A&M, and just like most of the other games, this game specifically, if they don't get that touchdown and score, there's no way that they end up winning. So,
yeah,
I don't know what happened to Jimbo, but his offensive acumen has gone out the window. I mean, their offense is just horrible.
It's 1990s. I mean, honestly, it's so defensive coordinators have to sit there and just kind of laugh to themselves because there's nothing original to it at all. I mean, the guy used to be called the quarterback whisperer, and now I'm starting to doubt that was ever really there. I mean, yeah, he had Jameis Winston in a great receiving core and on a phenomenal defense at Florida State.
Yeah.
But since then, what the hell has he had?
Nothing. I mean,
Nothing.
He just had one of the best college quarterbacks of all time.
Yeah.
And it made him look really good. So, yeah, I don't know. I just, every time I watch them play on offense, I want to turn it off because their
hard
offense
to watch.
Sucks. It's very hard to watch.
It's like watching a train wreck. You don't want to watch it, but you got to watch it to see really how bad it was. I mean, you go back to that App State game. I mean, that made the score look close. App State was owning them in Kyle Field.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And, once again, they got pretty much owned by Arkansas all day, and Arkansas just couldn't get it done. And like I said, I feel bad for them because this was a game that could have, catapulted them up near the top 5 and, really, really push them to be a team that can cause some concern for the Alabama, the Crimson Tide. Now, I don't think that Arkansas is just going to quit after this loss.
No.
I think this team is too good. They like each other. They like their coaches. They believe in this program. So I think Arkansas will shall I say, build off of this loss as opposed to just fall apart. I don't know what you think.
Well, I mean, they got to show up pretty quick because next week at 2:30 on CBS, they got Bama at home.
Right.
And this is a game that we circled that if someone was going to take a shot at Bama this year and taking on the West, it was going to be this game. And because other than that, you look at the rest of their schedule. I mean, what, BYU maybe? They play home against Old Miss. I mean, there's just a lot of games where, Arkansas is not going to have that great of competition on the way out. And they had a real chance of being that number 2 team in the SEC West and really changing the dynamic as a whole. So,
yeah, I agree. We'll see what happens next week. That is a huge game, but I honestly think it might be kind of a good thing for Arkansas to have lost going into this game because it's going to make them hungrier. It's going to make them more focused, I think, because I don't think they want to lose 2 in a row.
No.
I think they'll go back and want to build off this loss and get better. And I believe in Sam Pittman. Since he's gotten there, this program has completely changed around.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And I just don't think they're going to be scared of, Senator Saban and the Crimson Tide. I think this will be a good game. And hopefully Arkansas can either win or keep it close because I'd love to see them get the W and knock off Bama if they can.
Yes, agreed.
So next, we're going to stay right here in the SEC because we had another big game that occurred right here about 400 yards from where I'm standing. That was the Tennessee Volunteers taking on the Florida Gators here in Knoxville. And let's just be honest, the Tennessee Vols have had a horrible time with the Gators. I think they've beat them once in the last 17 tries.
Yeah.
So I really felt like Tennessee was a much better team coming into this game. I felt like Tennessee had a better offense. I felt like Tennessee's defense could contain Anthony Richardson. And I really felt like Tennessee was going to win this game. But the inside of me just kept telling the outside of me, hey, this is just the one team that for whatever reason Tennessee has trouble with. And, they've got to get this. You got to beat them to get this off their back. And they did. Now, it wasn't pretty. Went down to the very last play as it usually does in this game. But let's give Josh Heupel some credit. That offense, Florida just couldn't stop them all day long. They could not stop them no matter what they did. Tennessee's offense just ran up and down the field. And the biggest takeaway for me from this game was the Vols offense did that without their best player.
Exactly.
And that's Cedric Tillman. Cedric Tillman, besides Hooker, their best skill player is Cedric Tillman. And he didn't play in this game, not one snap. And honestly, at times I forgot that he wasn't playing because it didn't seem to really matter. And that's what I give Coach Heupel a ton of credit for. And that's what I give this Vols team credit for. They're missing their best weapon overall. And it didn't hamper them at all. So I give Tennessee a lot of credit. How good is this Tennessee team, James? You tell me.
I was high on them going into the year. My biggest question mark was their defense. Their defense was going to take them as far as they needed to go. But there were a lot of prognosticators saying that Hendon Hooker's numbers last year were inflated. 33 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Everybody heard the numbers. 70% completion percentage. Well, go out, look at what he's doing right now.
Yeah,
8 touchdowns, no interceptions, 71 completion percentage. And he didn't have Cedric Tillman yesterday. You put Cedric Tillman in this game, quite frankly, they drop a 50 burger on Florida. I think one of the big things to look at is Brew McCoy looked like he's finally coming into the hype that everybody thought Brew McCoy was going to be. Anthony Richardson, 453 yards, but on 24 of 44. And running wise, they only averaged 3.4 yards per carry. They only had two runs longer than 10 yards. They tried to play with Tennessee, trying to play Tennessee ball, and it blew up in their face. And
Yeah.
I mean, quite frankly, I'm shocked that Tennessee didn't win by more. But, when you've got that streak sitting behind you, it's almost like you start the game down 14 points
True.
because you're constantly, there has been so much bad luck in this game for the Vols over the years.
Yeah, I mean, just think back to some of the games that one year where Florida never scored a touchdown and won 9-6.
Yeah.
The Hail Mary game where Cleveland caught that pass and got behind the defenders when the game was basically over. So yeah, I think the Vol fans were just sitting there on their hands, just waiting to clap because they wanted to win this game so bad, but it's never really over till it finally the final whistle sounds, and they did end up winning. But yeah, I watched Brew McCoy in the first game of the year against Ball State, and I was like, whoa, this guy, I wasn't 100% sure about him, but he looked good, and I was impressed with him. And now, he's up to about 13 receptions, over 200 yards receiving. He had a 70-yard catch yesterday where it was a broken coverage, but give him credit. He's finally living up to the billing, and that's huge for the Vols because they were in desperate need of a third guy. They had Tillman,
Yeah.
they've got Jalen Hyatt, but it was like, who is going to be that third option for the Vols wide receivers? And it's definitely turned in to Brew McCoy, and that's huge for them because without Cedric Tillman yesterday, they really needed him to step up, and he stepped up big. So, so far, I can't believe I'm saying this, but what I've seen out of Tennessee leads me to believe they can go just as far as they can go as far as this offense will take them. And the biggest thing to me is, can they stay healthy?
Yeah.
If Tennessee can stay healthy, I think they can win the East. I think they can beat Georgia. But if they have a rash of injuries on defense, they're in big trouble because they're.
Well, heck, if they lose Hendon Hooker, they're in big trouble. There's a drop off there. I mean, you go back to, one of the reasons why I like the transfer portal in some cases is remember when he was at Virginia Tech? He just never looked good. No. And then you bring him under Josh Heupel's offense, and it's like the sun came out and everything came together. This kid's confidence just explodes off the page, and it's great to see him really enjoying the game.
I agree. I think he's a great kid. I think the change of scenery and this offense was a breath of fresh air to him.
Yeah.
It's really accentuated his abilities. But at the same time, I've got to be honest, I've watched all their games, and Joe Milton looks better this year. The action that he's seen, it looks like a different Joe Milton. So I feel like I do think it would be a problem if Hendon Hooker went down, obviously, but I think more so on defense. If they were to lose Young, their defensive end, if they were to lose one of their linebackers, they're really thin at linebacker. They're pretty thin in the secondary. Flowers goes down, one of their corners. I feel like, their first 11 on defense are pretty solid, but beyond that, not that great. So I'm more worried about an injury on defense because, let's be honest, their defense is a tad suspect to begin with. So they played well yesterday, and I give them a lot of credit for that. But if somebody goes down on their defense, I feel like things could unravel. But as it stands right now, they were ranked number 11 going into yesterday. They took care of business at home against a Florida team that's just plagued them with a rash of defeats over the years. So kudos to the Vols, and congratulations to all the people around me here that are probably hungover as crap this morning after setting the Cumberland Avenue on fire last night. So good for them. I'm happy that they won. Now we know, both of us know, before the year, every year, all we hear is Notre Dame's going to be back and win the national championship. They're a top 10 team. We hear that every year. We hear Texas is going to be back this year. They're a top 10 team. They're going to be back. We hear Miami is going to be back. They got Cristobal. They've got Diaz. They have a different coach every 3 years, and they're going to be back, and they're going to, win titles again like they did when Michael Irvin was there. Not so fast, my friend. These teams are still, several of them, struggling mightily. And the first one I want to talk about is the other U, I guess we should say, because my boy, Knoxville Catholic High School's own Chase Cunningham, went into Coral Gables yesterday and lit up the Hurricanes. And God, I loved watching it, man. I love this kid. This kid is 5'8", maybe 5'9", it with shoes on. He is about 180 pounds soaking wet, possibly. And he's had to fight to get on the field. I mean, he's the last 2 years, he's kind of started some games and then they would go back to someone else. Then they'd come back to him. And he's never been the full-time starter until this year, his 6th year. And yesterday he was 16 of 25, 408 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also ran in a couple of touchdowns as well. I think, or he ran in another touchdown. So he had 4 touchdowns on the day, put 45 points on the Hurricanes. What the hell happened yesterday with MTSU taking out Miami, James? What did you think about when you saw that?
Well, first of all, I got to give Miami credit on running the same promotion at every home football game as the fans, that sellout crowd at Hard Rock Stadium as dress as your favorite seat, because I mean, that place was rocking. I mean, all 2,000 people were there in full regalia. I mean, wow. Uncle Luke has just got to be so proud right now of the you dun dun. I mean, are they going to do another? Are they going to do another 30 for 30 about how bad the program has gotten and how their fan base shows up like it's nobody's business? I mean, here's some stats just to give you some heads up of really how bad a loss this was. There were 4 plays of 69 yards or more passing. 4. I mean, I'm not talking 20 or more. These are like super duper explosion plays. They had 1 for 69, 1 for 89, 1 for 98, and 1 for 71. I'm sorry. If I'm a D-back at the Miami right now, I do not want to go to film session today because something's going to get ripped real big.
Yeah, and how do you run 38 times for 60 yards on MTSU?
Against a Conference USA defense. 1.6 yards per carry. By the way,
ridiculous.
Tyler Van Dyke's Heisman hype, I think, is officially in the grave, and the dirt is on it. I mean, this is...
Yeah, Anthony Richardson and Tyler Van Dyke are hanging out together in the green room at the Heisman ceremony because they're no longer going to be invited to an actual seat in the facility because both those guys suck. And I'd never understood why Tyler Van Dyke was getting so much love. I mean, he tends to occasionally, rack up some stats against crap teams, but 16 of 32 for 130 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, and I believe he was replaced in this game. Is that correct?
Yeah, by Garcia, that kid that came from California that his parents divorced, and because remember they shut down the California high school season that year. His parents purposely divorced and they moved to Georgia, and he ended up having to switch schools because they ruled him ineligible. And then ends up committing to Miami and playing there. It was wow. I mean, granted, Mario Cristobal has had problems on offense, but oh my God, like this is a lot bigger of a pull than people give it credit for. I mean, this could be a longer rebuild than people thought. I mean, it's not Howard Schnellenberger bad, but it's going to be more than people thought.
Yeah, well, they're definitely not just back because you want them to be back. I mean, you have to beat some teams and win some games and like do something in order to actually be back. You can't just, get a couple recruits and then all of a sudden act like you're some amazing team. I just don't understand that. Like, okay, you come back, you win the ACC, you make the college football playoff. Okay, then you can start giving the team credit. But just because you go out and pluck Oregon's coach away and you get a couple recruits, that doesn't mean you're going to be good.
Yeah.
And that stands true for the U, and that also stands true for the other team that always seems to be back every year, and that is the Texas Longhorns and Coach Sark, who hopefully somebody's locked the liquor cabinet because they went down yesterday. Was that mean? Oh my God, that was so mean.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that was part of the
mean.
reason why I didn't know if this was a good fit for him. Is, if he deals with football, the guy's a good coach. But the problem is at Texas, their freaking alumni base is batshit crazy.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they're nuts. And Joey McGuire, I mean, we've been talking about him for a while now.
Oh
this
yeah,
guy
you're the one that called that hire, and you really liked that hire when other people criticized it, and you were all about it, and you said that you thought that he would win some games that people didn't think he would win. And I've got to point that out because that was a big victory for Tech yesterday, a big win for them. And I mean, I don't think anybody else besides you ever gave them credit to be able to do it.
Zach Kitely, their offensive coordinator, he used to be at Western Kentucky last year. I'm telling you, he is the next Lincoln Riley. Someone's going to hire him in the next couple of years. This is a name to watch. And I mean, kind of like that Brady OC, that OC Joe Brady that was at LSU.
Yeah,
he's got that type of hype behind him because he's imaginative. And once again, going into Lubbock is not easy, but I mean, if you look at it on paper, Texas should have taken these guys to school. Instead, Texas's defense, once again, proved it's not that good. Yeah. And Texas Tech just knows how to beat teams. I mean, now, do I think Texas Tech is going to go 10-2 and win the Big 12? No, not at all. I don't think they've got the personnel to do it. But from a coaching perspective, Joey McGuire's legit, like very legit.
You know, the other thing that I haven't heard anyone talk about is this quarterback, Donovan Smith.
Yeah.
For the Red Raiders. They're 3-1 now, and this guy is legitimate. I mean, 38 of 56, 331, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He also ran it 15 times for 42 yards and another touchdown. 3 touchdowns for this kid that he accounted for and a bouton of yards. I thought he looked pretty good. I was pretty impressed with him. I hadn't heard a ton about him, and I knew who he was, but I hadn't heard a ton about him. And when I went back and watched this game, I was pretty impressed. I thought he could make all the throws. He's a big kid, but he can run pretty well for how big he is.
Yeah.
And, I like him. I think he said something like he's 6'6", 230. And he looks it, man. It's like a mix between what's his name, Cam Newton and Anthony Richardson. And I was pretty impressed with him. He's thrown for over 1,000 yards on the season. He's got 9 touchdowns overall, throwing wise. So I don't know. I don't know if this is the year that Tech is going to really challenge for a Big 12 championship, but I think they can sneak up on some teams. And I think this is not going to be their last victory. That's for sure.
Oh God, no. I mean, this kid was a project coming up out of high school. He was 6'4", 190, razor thin. Like he needed a good weight room out of a really unknown program in Friendship, Texas. I mean, you look at his recruiting byline. I mean, he was just had a bunch of like mid majors on there. Like, I mean, good ones. We're talking like Nevada back when Jay Norvell was there, and look what Jay Norvell did in developing quarterbacks there. San Diego State and Utah State. But he goes to Texas Tech. And I mean, Wells was running a good offensive set. Their biggest problem was defense. They couldn't stop a cold. And now, I mean, you had him and Tyler Shug fighting it out. And I thought Tyler Shug was going to get it just based on the hype, and he did it first. And now Donovan Smith just looks like a world beater out there. I mean, the kid just keeps exceeding expectations year after year after year. They're legit. They're very much legit. I mean, as usual, Texas Tech has a problem on defense. They always have until you go back to like the Spike Dykes era, back when Zach Thomas was playing middle linebacker for them. And that's forever ago. I mean, we're talking 30 years now. But
yeah, he's been retired from the NFL for like 15 years. So
yeah, Donovan Smith though is legit player for that offense and really makes that engine hum.
I liked him. I thought he looked really good. I mean, is he Patrick Mahomes? No, but he definitely, can spin the ball.
Yeah.
And I think this offense is perfect for him. So hopefully they'll have a good season. I like that coach McGuire, like you said, and I like that kid. He seemed to be a good kid and has some skill to him. We're running out of time here, so let's wrap this up real quick as far as going through the rest of the games in the conference. Let's talk Big Ten real quick. Obviously, there was the showdown in the shoe last night. We had the blackout going on. No Jackson Smith and Jigba. No Cam Brown, the starting corner. No, who's the other corner? My brain just went blank. The kid that was a freshman last year.
Oh, Ward. Denzel Ward. Oh,
no,
Denzel Burke. Denzel Burke.
Yes, Denzel. No Denzel Burke. No Cam Brown. No Martinez. We were down 3 corners, and we were down Jackson Smith and Jigba, and this game was not even as close as the score appeared. I mean, I think at one point it was 38-7, and the time ran out in the half. They could have scored again. This was an ass kicking to the nth degree. Graham Mertz is officially sucks. He's horrible.
It took you that long to figure that out?
No, I knew it before this game, but after watching this game, I can confirm once again, Graham Mertz is dog crap. Braylon Allen, you look at the end of the game, it looks like he had a bunch of yards, but he had 75 of them on one play, which occurred after the game was just over. So really, I look at this defense and, the starters gave up 7 points. So I think Jim Knowles has done wonders with this. I think the question marks that some people threw out about the offense in Columbus are answered. And I think the Buckeyes look pretty good. What'd you think about this game? Did you think it was going to be a blowout like this before?
No, I didn't.
I didn't either.
I didn't either. I thought Ohio State would win. I thought they win by 3 touchdowns. I mean, calling it 52-21 makes it sound close. This game was just like over quick. I mean, it was like watching a Mike Tyson fight from the 80s where, I mean, they came out and throwing haymakers right off the bat, and Wisconsin was just like stunned. I mean, they just came out so quick without Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, could you imagine if he was there too? This could have been really bad. I mean, I've never seen a Jim Leonard defense look this unprepared. Granted, it's tough playing in the shoe.
It is. And this offense is good, but I just thought he would come up with some type of scheme to keep this game a little bit closer. Because like you said, and I said, this score has no indication of how far apart this game was. Emeka Mbuka, 6 catches, 100 yards again. This is his 3rd game over 100 yards. Julian Fleming is starting to really show up. The number 1 receiver from, 2019?
Correct.
He's actually started to really show up, and it's because he's healthy. The Buckeyes had 2 guys over 100 yards, Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams. Both of them had over 100. Both of them averaged 6 yards per carry or more. And, Cade Stover, this guy, I have to talk about him for a minute because he's from Little Lexington High School, where my uncle used to work and be the principal at. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's a farming community. He comes from a farm. This kid was one of the best players ever to come out of Lexington. He's played defensive end. He's played linebacker. He's played on special teams. He started in the Rose Bowl at linebacker and had 10 tackles. They moved him back to tight end, and I was just like, they're going to use him as a blocker. Last night he had 2 touchdown catches and looked amazing. So kudos to him. This was C.J. Stroud's 7th game where he's thrown 5 touchdowns or more. I think he's only played in like 14. Or 15, and he's got 7 games where he's got 5 touchdowns or more. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, plus you got to talk about that Minnesota game yesterday too, as well. I mean,
that blew me away, man. I thought Minnesota would win. I'm the one, if everyone will recall, I am the one that picked Minnesota to win the division.
Correct.
And I thought they would win this game. I did not think they would pistol whip the Spartans like that. That was a unbelievably big time ass kicking. James, what happened? What went through your guys' mind when you guys were all watching it?
I mean, defensively, they looked incredible. I mean, they gave up what, 3 first downs in the first half. I think they got cross midfield once. Michigan State did. I mean, the defense looks legit, and the cornerback Justin Whaley, you got to watch this kid. This kid I thought he was outstanding as a freshman All-American cornerback last year out of Mississippi, a state that Minnesota never recruits. And we get a kid to come in out of Mississippi. He looked even more outstanding this year. I mean, he had a pick in the second half that was just crazy. But line of scrimmage play just destroyed the Spartans. And that's where the bread and butter of that team is. And really picked on, without Chris Ottman-Bell, really picked on that team a lot. I mean, you had Chris Ottman-Bell, we'd be talking a 50 burger right now. And the Spartans had to score with 17 seconds to go to not get shut out at home.
Yeah.
At home. That never happens.
No, and I thought that, after losing out at Washington last week, that Sparty would come back and, would really put up a fight in this game. As I mentioned, I picked Minnesota. I thought that Minnesota would win and, take this game, but it was like they never even returned from Washington. So I was shocked. I hope that everybody in East Lansing's really happy. They have $100 million invested in Mel Tucker because that's 2 weeks in a row that they've kind of unraveled, and the coaching was not great. So, I don't really know what to tell you, but doesn't look good for old Sparty. They seem to be getting worse each week, which is kind of the opposite of what you're supposed to do, I think. I don't know.
I knew losing Kenny Walker was going to hurt.
Yeah.
But I mean, I didn't realize to this extent.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was going to dismantle their offense for good. So let's finish up the Big Ten. Penn State took care of business, beat Central Michigan. Yep. Cincinnati took care of business against Indiana, gave them their first loss of the year, 45-24. The one game that kind of surprised me was the Iowa game. Now, it looks like they had a ton of points because they scored 27, but their defense scored twice.
Yes.
So Iowa's wins 27-10 over an improved Rutgers team. Northwestern gets beat by Miami of Ohio. Not good. And Purdue barely wins against Florida Atlantic. My biggest takeaway from the rest of this is, does Iowa have any shot next week beating Michigan, James?
I do.
You think
Honestly,
so?
I do. I mean, that defense is legit. If you haven't watched Jack Campbell play linebacker or Benson, you're missing out. I mean, they are really good. I mean, Jack Campbell especially. He's 6'5". He's a pterodactyl. He's got really long arms. He covers space well. I mean, he is an incredible talent that, I mean, honestly, I'd probably put him as the best linebacker during the Ferentz era, and that's saying a lot. I mean, you've had some outstanding linebackers like Chad Greenway, first-round draft pick. I mean, this is a very legit linebacking core in Iowa. It's just that offense is just abysmal. I mean, it's going to be a rock fight between Michigan and Iowa, and I would venture a guess first 1 to 20 wins, and the over-under will be under 40.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just running through the rest of the SEC, Kentucky was in a dogfight with Northern Illinois. Didn't expect that. I think it's more of an indication of Kentucky might be a little bit overrated. They kind of bumped them up. I just don't feel like Kentucky's a number 8 team. I don't know about you, but I know they got a lot of pub for beating Florida. Well, it seems like everyone's beating Florida now.
Yeah,
and we'll see how good they are next week. But winning 31-23 versus Northern Illinois almost feels like a loss. And they got a big game next week against Ole Miss. And I would say that Ole Miss would pistol whip them, but Ole Miss almost lost yesterday to Tulsa and ended up winning 35-27. So those two teams will play next week. We'll figure out which one's better from those two. And then Auburn tried as hard as they could to lose to Missouri. I don't know. Did you see this game?
I did. It was ugly. It was
The
like watching Texas A&M offense.
So
Honestly,
Missouri's running back is running into the end zone to win the game, and he drops the ball. He's no one's around him, and he like holds the ball out, I guess, to cross. I don't know what he was doing, but he holds the ball out and he just lets go of it, and it falls to the ground, bounces into the end zone, and Auburn recovers it. So instead of Missouri scoring, winning the game, Auburn recovers it, kicks a field goal, and wins in overtime. I've never seen anything like that in my life. And oh my gosh, I know that guy's feeling rough today.
oh, absolutely.
But the saga in Auburn continues.
Well,
They are 3 and they want to fire their coach every week, but they're 3-1. I mean,
yeah, but the sun's going to set at the end of the day because the schedule gets a little more difficult as time moves on.
He's not making it. He's not making it through this whole season.
Oh, if he makes it to November, that will be shocking.
Yeah, no way. They've got so let's talk about what they have coming up. Auburn next week plays LSU. The week after plays at Georgia. Then they go to Ole Miss. Then they come home and play Arkansas. Then they go to Mississippi State. Then they come home against A&M. Then they have a bye week against Western Kentucky, who's not that bad. And then they travel to Tuscaloosa. So that is a rough that's a rough finish to the season for Brian Harsin. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens. But finally, big winner of the day for you, James, is which team was a big winner?
Kansas Jayhawks, baby, 4-0. Now, who out there was calling Kansas Jayhawks before the year? I've been preaching Lance Leopold. I thought it was going to take them longer, but when I saw over/under of win total at 2.5, and I looked at their schedule, I'm like, I could give you 2 right now off the top of my head, and they're going to find a way to get that third game. Heck, we're not even to October, and they're at 4. They're going to go bowling this year, and this offense is legit, is very legit. I mean, this is – I mean, they're not going to be world beaters, but could they go out and knock off an OU, a Texas? Yeah, they can. Well, they've proven it last year that they can do it. And I just wish the athletic department re-signs Lance Leopold to an extension now. Don't even wait till the end of the year because he is going to become the hot commodity across the country, especially in the land of Lincoln. Just up north in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah, I hear they're looking for a coach, aren't they?
Yeah, there's a rumor about that. Granted, I think their first choice is Jesus, but I don't think even Jesus could save Nebraska right now. So, I mean, I like Lance Leopold, but I hope he stays in Lawrence because I think he is a great fit there and is rebuilding the culture of a program that really hasn't been good since the Fat Man was on the sidelines. I mean, every time there's just a different vibe in Lawrence watching this team play.
Yeah, it's the first time in a long time that I've seen like actual football being played in a team with Kansas uniforms on. It's pretty crazy. Who's your big loser of the day?
Uncle Luke has just got to be pissed right now watching Miami play football. But I mean, he got to dress as his favorite seat at Hard Rock Stadium yesterday. So
that's 2 weeks in a row that they've just looked like utter dog garbage. Getting beat by A&M, and would they score 7 points last week, and then come back and getting throttled by MTSU.
Middle.
My favorite part of the game was when the U scored. They finally cut it. I think they cut it to like 2-score game or 10 points, and everybody's like, okay. And then they've got MTSU backed up on their own 2. And they're like, okay, well, maybe they can make a play here. They'll get good field position, make this game close, maybe take the lead. And that's when Chase Cunningham fires a 98-yard touchdown pass, and the game's over at that point. So nice work, you. I think we can officially rule them out of the ACC title contention at this point, don't you think?
Well, I think you could make Florida State the state champs of Florida already.
Oh, yeah.
Just I mean, we haven't even played the game yet. Just give them the title now, because who else is going to take it? I mean, what?
I don't know. I don't know. But the thing is that Florida State could fall apart too. So I'm kind of scared to say that. I know they're 4-0 right now, but we've seen them. We've seen the wheels fall off of their wagon before too. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens. But another great week of college football. There's a bunch of games that were super close that ended up not being like upsets, but it very well could have been. And hopefully we'll have more, because I love it when there's teams that have no shot to win and end up pulling it out. That's what makes college football great. So I hope we have some more of those coming up.
It's going to be interesting next week where they bring College Game Day. I mean, honestly, I would probably go to Fayetteville. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, Arkansas, Alabama is probably where they'll go. We've got Oklahoma State, Baylor is a pretty good game, 9-17.
NC State at Clemson. I mean, look at what
NC State Clemson's a very good game. Wake Forest, Florida State, 3-1 versus 4-0. That's a pretty good game. But yeah, I would say honestly, the game that I'm probably looking forward to the most is NC State Clemson. NC State beat them last year in 2 overtimes. But this year, they really have a good shot, I think, of beating them again. And if they can beat them in Clemson, that would be huge for that program down there in NC State, don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, Dave Dornan, it took him a little while, and I'm glad to see the patience that NC State's athletic department had with him, but he's really building a strong foundation in Raleigh.
I agree, and this would be a huge game for both him and the program if they can get it done and win this game. I think it puts them in the driver's seat for the ACC champion.
I agree.
All right, well, excellent job, excellent week of college football once again. We'll be back with you next week, same bat time, same bat channel, man coverage. Check us out if you missed any of the show. Go to YouTube, subscribe, like, and download any of the shows. And definitely get caught up on today's stuff if you missed any of it. James, we'll talk to you again real soon. Keep your chin up and go Gophers.
Row the boat, Sky Uman, go Gophers.
I like it. Talk to you, buddy.
Later.